Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing well, staying safe and staying at home. So I was going to do a video today about the events of Monday Night Raw last night, going through a few things that had happened there. But then the breaking news this morning is that Cain Velasquez, the former UFC heavyweight champion, has been released by the WWE. Now, this is obviously part of the cost-cutting measures which we saw last week due to the whole situation that the world is in at the moment, cost-cutting measures, etc., etc. We don't need to go into that whole ordeal again, but specifically Cain Velasquez. Now, I must say, at the time of recording, this is not been officially announced by the WWE. We haven't had an official announcement through WWE.com as we had with the other WWE signings. But it's been reported by Dave Meltzer on the Wrestling Observer radio show. So, of course, a pretty credible source, but we'll have to wait and see till that gets confirmed. But with the assumption that it is true, I have quite mixed feelings towards it, to be honest. When I first heard the news, it was one of those eye-rolling situations, of course, where you go, okay, what was the whole point of the Cain Velasquez WWE experiment in the first place? And we'll get into all the reasons of that in a minute. Obviously, it makes sense from a financial point of view. Cain Velasquez was on a big money contract. I believe, I don't have the exact figures to hand at the moment, but I believe it was around $3 million a year. Cain Velasquez was a big name in the MMA world, and he has some crossover appeal, which of course WWE loves. So to sign Cain Velasquez to a full-time contract, which it was going to cost a pretty penny, and that's exactly what it did. So it's a strange one. It's a strange one because, like I said, I understand it from the financial point of view, from the booking point of view. It's strange because obviously Cain Velasquez's only match he had inside a WWE ring was against Brock Lesnar. It was the UFC rematch, and it only lasted 2 minutes. Now there was obviously a variety of reasons as to why the match lasted 2 minutes. Obviously because of Cain Velasquez's deficiencies in the ring, and because also at the time he had a serious knee injury, which he has since had surgery on. So he was physically limited in the ring. So his only match inside of the WWE ring isn't really anything to write home about, and his whole WWE career is just a strange one that just never really... I'm not sure who really wanted it in the first place. I wasn't one of those people that immediately jumped on, oh, here we go, another outside person coming in, taking a spot, etc. I always felt that Cain Velasquez did have something to offer WWE in terms of crossover appeal, in terms of mainstream appeal, if he was booked correctly. I always felt that, one, he needed to go and get the knee surgery fixed, and he obviously needed to learn and hone his skills better in the ring. And that's what he was, by all accounts, doing. He was at the Performance Center, he had his knee fixed, and he was basically waiting for his next storyline or his next appearance to come up. He even said around January or December time that he was going to be in the Royal Rumble match, and he expected to be in the Royal Rumble match. Of course, we later found out that that wouldn't be the case. So Cain Velasquez's only appearance inside a WWE ring in terms of having a match was at Crown Jewel in 2019, whereby he tapped out to Brock Lesnar in under 2 minutes. And that's it for the Cain Velasquez story in WWE, which just to me seems strange. And I drew the parallel on social media earlier when I spoke about it, that it reminds me of the Ultimate Warrior Hulk Hogan Halloween Havoc 1998 scenario. Obviously, Ultimate Warrior beat Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania a few years prior, becoming the WWE and Intercontinental Champion at the time. It was meant to be the passing of the torch, the sort of a sign that Hulkamania was coming and going, and WWE was strapping the rocket to the Ultimate Warrior, and he was going to be the next Hulk Hogan, if you will. And obviously, we know what happened there, but several years later, obviously they never had the rematch. They never had another match. Several years later, when you had the villainous Hulk Hogan in the NWO and WCW, the Ultimate Warrior was brought in to have that rematch, the rematch that WWE never produced between Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. And that match happened at Halloween Havoc, and it goes down as one of, if not the worst match definitely in WCW history, and that says a lot considering some of the matches they had, but it's up there for one of the worst matches ever in professional wrestling history. And the main thing looking back on that whole scenario, and why I tie it back into Cain Velasquez, is that everyone kind of just said the reason it happened, the reason that Warrior was brought back in for all that money, and the reason they had that rematch is because Hogan wanted to get his win back, by all accounts. Now, whether or not that's true, it certainly was a money match, and the segments on Nitro drew a big rating for what that's worth, and I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. The analogy has been brought back to you can have a grand restaurant opening and it can be sold out, but if the food's terrible, they're not going to come back. It's a similar scenario to that Ultimate Warrior debut segment on Nitro. But the reason I bring this up, and I've gone off on that tangent when it comes to Cain Velasquez, is now that Cain came in, had his match, lost to Brock Lesnar in dominant fashion, 2 minutes, taps out, and then we never see him again. It kind of makes you think, was Cain Velasquez just brought in so Brock could get his win back from the UFC? I mean, famously, Cain Velasquez, destroyed Brock Lesnar in UFC, became the UFC heavyweight champion, left Brock Lesnar with a scar under his eye, completely cut him open, and it was dominant fashion. And even at the time when WWE was promoting this match for Crown Jewel, it was surprising that they were talking about that loss in terms of Brock Lesnar, because it doesn't show Brock Lesnar in the light that WWE likes to show him in. It doesn't fit the narrative of this dominant beast that can destroy people inside a WWE ring under 5 minutes and doesn't have any troubles against anyone, and he's just, he's the beast, he's Brock Lesnar, Suplex City. That whole UFC loss doesn't factor into that image of Brock Lesnar very well. So I was surprised that WWE at the time were speaking about that loss so openly and the dominant fashion in which Cain Velasquez defeated Brock Lesnar in the UFC so openly. But now looking back on it, it kind of makes a bit of sense, doesn't it? Because now Brock Lesnar got his win back, and he's back to being the beast. He avenged that defeat. And a lot of people at the time thought, okay, well, there's going to be something else down the road for Cain Velasquez. When you come in, you should be doing a job. It makes sense. But now that he's been released, it kind of, there's something just in the back of my mind that sort of goes, was this just to, satisfy? I don't think Brock necessarily cares. But was it to make Brock look good? Yes, probably. Probably. It makes the most sense. And I'm not just saying they brought him in just to, job him out to Brock and then released him. Obviously, the current climate at the moment does play a significant factor. We've spoken about what happened last week with the releases, with Black Wednesday, and the cost-cutting measures that WWE announced and were in place to save them however much money they said. Was it $4 million a month? I don't know. But with Cain Velasquez being on a contract with a significant downside, with his lack of prowess in the ring, and his recent injuries, even though his knee injury has healed, I suppose WWE would look at him from a financial point of view and going, are we getting the most value for money there? And I think at the moment it's no, they aren't. They had the 2 minute match. He hasn't had any matches since. He's a drain on the wage bill. Is he value for money at the moment? No, I would say not. So financially, it does make sense. I'm sympathetic towards Cain though, because I felt that, as I mentioned earlier on in the video, that when he came in and when he made his debut on the premiere episode of SmackDown, you got to remember that show was watched by nearly, was it 4 million people? And that's SmackDown's big debut on Fox, culminated in the debut of Cain Velasquez in October, and fast forward to April of 2020, and he's gone. And it's a strange one. But as I mentioned, at the time when he made his debut, there were a lot of people that were cynical and a lot of people that felt that he was taking up another spot and he was undeserving of the spot that he was in, etc., etc. And I was really keen on seeing him prove those people wrong, and really dedicate himself to professional wrestling and become a decent worker in the ring, get healthy, get his knee fixed, and then come back in, 6 months, 12 months, and just be 10 times better in the ring, and could actually be properly booked as this dominant MMA style fighter who is on the program every week in comparison to someone like Brock Lesnar. I wanted to see him prove people wrong, and I sympathize with Cain Velasquez because obviously he hasn't had the opportunity to do that, whether it's through injury, whether it's through the creative team not knowing what to do with him, whether it's through maybe his own deficiencies in the ring. There's obviously a story we don't know about at the moment when it comes to Cain Velasquez, but I do sympathize with him, that I feel that it would have been good for him to be able to prove people wrong and not just have a 2-minute match inside of a WWE ring. He's admitted openly that he was committed, and this is what he wanted to do in being a professional wrestler, and he wanted to prove the doubters wrong. And as I mentioned, it's a shame to me that he just never got to prove those people wrong. And I feel that if he did get that opportunity, whether or not he would have succeeded, who knows? Who knows whether he would have succeeded or not in proving those people wrong. But I think everyone deserves the chance, and I think he deserved the chance. So I sympathise with him on that. But as I mentioned, I also sympathise with WWE, even though it's difficult to do in 2020 to sympathise with them about the financial side of things. Financially, it's a decision that completely makes sense. So in terms of a retrospective of Cain Velasquez's WWE career, it stands out as one of those strange ones, isn't it? One of those strange mainstream attempts of someone coming across to WWE, and it hasn't worked out. Now, when you factor in other sports stars that haven't worked out, obviously the comparison now, I suppose, can be to Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski, he signed a deal with WWE. It was a big story. It was a big story with Fox that he was becoming a professional wrestler after retiring from the NFL and retiring from the New England Patriots. And then after, 3 appearances with WWE, he had the SmackDown that he made his debut on, and then he had the 2 WrestleMania host days that he did. He decides, I want to go back to NFL, and he's signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with his friend Tom Brady. And the WWE career of Gronk would appear to be over. So again, that's 2 mainstream sports stars that WWE signed because they had a lot of name value. They could get a lot of eyes on the product, and it just hasn't worked out. It hasn't worked out at all. And as I mentioned, obviously the current climate does play a factor into this, and we can't ignore that. That the current, if things were normal at the moment, Cain Velasquez would certainly still be under contract. There's no question in my mind he would still be under contract. Cynics might say that WWE signed him in the first place because Cain Velasquez, I have to remember at the time, Cain Velasquez was doing shows for AAA in Mexico, and he made quite a splash in Mexico doing these appearances for AAA. I believe he was in a 6-man tag match, did well. Surprised people by how solid he actually was in the ring. He competed under a mask, and if reports are to be believed, he actually wanted to appear under a mask in WWE, but WWE said, look, everyone knows who you are. You Cain Velasquez. We need the mainstream crossover appeal. This is the reason we're interested in you. We're not interested in you because you're an amazing wrestler. We're interested in you because you're Cain Velasquez, because of your sports history. You're a former UFC heavyweight champion. So he made a few appearances under the mask in AAA and worked some pretty decent matches. I believe he drew some pretty decent gates while he was on the card for AAA. So some people cynically might have said, look, WWE wanted the Latino Mexican market and they wanted to hurt a competitor. So they signed up Cain Velasquez for a load of money. Or, of course, Cain Velasquez could have easily gone to a competitor like an AEW. He was certainly talking to a lot of people at the time. He always indicated that his number one intention was to go to WWE. I believe Triple H has even gone on record saying that he actually held talks with WWE a year prior to when he signed and said, look, I'm out of MMA, or I'm thinking of getting out of MMA. I want to sign with WWE. And they said, look, we're going to need a full-time commitment from you. And he was still kind of in the MMA field at that period of time and wasn't completely sure whether he wanted to hang it up or if he wanted to go back and forth, which a couple of guys have tried, but no one to a real success has been able to pull that off. So WWE said to him, we need you full time. And a year later, he works a couple of shows for AAA. He says, I'll retire from MMA if I can get a WWE contract. And that's what happened. And here we are now, and he's already been released. So it's for me, I would say it's a sad one. It's a sad one because I really do think that he didn't get the opportunity to prove people wrong, and I really think everyone should get their opportunity, and it just didn't work out for him. Some people will say, and I do partially agree with these people when they say, what's the point of signing him in the first place? It was a waste of time. We look back on it, absolutely was it a waste of time, yes. And I'm sure he got paid handsomely for his 2-minute appearance at Crown Jewel, so I'm sure his bank account is fine about it. I don't know. I felt that there was a couple more chapters left in the Cain Velasquez story, but to do one match, never be seen again, it just seems like a massive waste, isn't it? And just typical WWE in 2020 that they don't really know what they're doing. And this idea and this philosophy that they've had for the last 2 years, really, of let's just sign everyone up and they can't work somewhere else. Obviously, no one knew the climate, what was going to happen in the world in 2020, and no one knew about just what, like I said, what was going to happen and where we would be at this moment in 2020. But this philosophy of we're going to sign everyone, we're going to hoard everyone, and we're going to keep everyone under contract, as I said, has come back to bite WWE, and in my opinion, rightfully so. I don't think that's the right way to do it. Just because you have the money doesn't mean you should sign up everyone and pay people to sit at home. We've seen at this point numerous interviews of people like Brody Lee, people like Matt Hardy, people like Jon Moxley. I'm not just naming obviously the people that have jumped to AEW, but in the interviews they've had post WWE, Rhino included, of course, went to Impact after he was released from WWE, who have said, look, WWE, but when I was halfway out the door, offered me a ton of money, more money than I probably have ever made in my career in a contract, and they openly said they had no plans for me, but they wanted to keep me under contract. They were going to pay me handsomely to sit at home and do nothing. And why were they going to do that? Because WWE at the time had money to burn, and they wanted to keep people away from other people's television programs. Let's face it, in 2020, there are more professional wrestling programs and more places to go to earn money in the wrestling industry than there have been in a long, long time. I mean, at this point, we're nearly back to a territory system, aren't we? You've got the WWE, you've got AEW, you've got NWA, you've got Impact. You can go to Japan to numerous companies. You can go to Europe to numerous companies. I mean, there is a lot of ways to earn money now in professional wrestling. Obviously not at the moment when the shows are shut down, but you understand my point. So WWE's way of counterbalancing that was to open territories of their own, like an NXT UK, and we've heard about Japan and Canada, etc., across the globe, and also to sign talent to contracts and keep them there. And I guess this was a similar thing with Cain Velasquez. They didn't want him making money in Mexico. They didn't want him making money in the States, that's for sure, with the likes of, I don't know, New Japan America, or he could have gone to AEW, or could have gone to Impact and had like a UFC type fight with Ken Shamrock or something like that. They didn't want that to happen. They didn't want their competitors to be successful and to make money. So to counterbalance that, they signed people to contract, and at this point, obviously, they didn't forecast this crisis happening in 2020. No one did. And like I said, it's come back to bite them, and now we have the release of Cain Velasquez. Now, this might not be the last we've heard of releases when it comes to WWE. There have been reports specifically from WrestleVotes on Twitter. If you haven't followed them already, go and follow them. They've been an extremely credible source and extremely good place for inside wrestling gossip, especially in terms of the WWE. They've said that essentially because of the cost-cutting measures at the moment, because of WWE openly releasing people, all it takes at this point is for a talent to actually go to WWE and say, I want out of my contract. And they're pretty much releasing anyone that asks for it at the moment because they're so keen on cutting the costs. So it will be interesting to see who does take WWE up on that offer. We always hear the stories prior to all this craziness in the world going on at the moment that so-and-so has requested their release, they want out, loads of people unhappy, etc., etc. And it's funny what a pandemic will do in terms of job security. A lot of people wisely will say, look, maybe I don't like how it works in WWE at the moment. Maybe I don't like how I'm being used, but I need the money. My family needs the money. I need to provide a roof and food for my partner, for my children, etc., etc. So maybe they won't, but it'll be interesting to see who will say, look, this is my best chance of getting out of the contract. I'm out of here. And they join the likes of The Revival, Rusev, Kurt Angle, Drake Maverick, EC3, etc. on the free agent list, and will be free to go anywhere that they please. So it'll be interesting. And like I said, the Cain Velasquez news caught me off guard, but then the more I thought about it, it made sense financially. But it's a disappointment about his career, I would say, in WWE for sure. But of course, it's not just about my opinion. What do you think? Were you surprised to hear the news that Cain Velasquez has been released from the WWE? Do you think Cain Velasquez had more to offer? Do you think that he will be back, or he will go to another company once he's available? Let me know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can do that by clicking the button in the bottom right-hand corner on the screen right now, or if you wait a couple of extra seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch, or of course you can go to the channel and subscribe there. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms also. That's in the comment section below, and I'm sure I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.